Peace and blessings. Welcome back to the channel once again, where we talk all things health and healing from a holistic perspective, and today will be no different. Today we're going to talk about nature's top anti-inflammatory medicinal foods. This conversation is hugely important because most of the conditions that we have today that people are experiencing, the underlying cause is inflammation, and they don't even know that. As a matter of fact, inflammation is usually the check engine light that shows up before the disease formation process starts. So the good thing is, once you see the inflammation, you can then start to see where there's a problem, and you can start to change your habits so that the problem doesn't become a condition. Make sense? Okay? So I'm not just talking about the inflammation that comes when you twist your ankle, when you get a bruise from, an injury or something like that. That's not the inflammation that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the kind of inflammation that comes from disease formation, okay? The underlying beginning of the disease formation process is the inflammation. I'm gonna explain that in just a second, but it's hugely important. A lot of the conditions that we have today, the underlying foundation of that disease is inflammation, okay? And I'm gonna tell you how that inflammation starts, because it's important to know that that inflammation is the check engine light. That's the point where you need to recognize and say, okay, I need to look at my habits and change things. And what you'll notice is, if you shift your habits properly, the inflammation goes away. That stops the disease formation process, okay? All right, now typically when we see inflammation in the form of a diagnosis, it's often, you'll hear at the end of it, itis, okay? Itis, not the kind of itis that, we're coming up on Thanksgiving for a lot of people, and they're gonna be eating a whole bunch of food that, in our community, we say, I got the itis, where you're sleepy. No, that's not the itis that I'm talking about. In medicine, we refer to itis as inflammation, okay? So there's many conditions that are the underlying cause of the condition, or the underlying sort of beginning of the process is inflammation. And we denote that by the itis at the end of the diagnosis, okay? Give you a few examples. Carditis, which is an inflammation in the heart, okay? You also have things like meningitis, which is the inflammation of the meninges in the brain, okay? You also have rheumatoid arthritis, okay, which is inflammations in the joint, okay? You also have diabetes mellitus, okay, which is an inflammation caused by high levels of blood sugar, okay? You also have otitis media, which is the inflammation in the eye, okay? You also have diverticulitis, which is the inflammation in the gut, or irritable bowel syndrome as well, or ulcerative colitis, inflammation in the colon. You also have bronchitis, which is inflammation in the lungs. You also have plantar fasciitis, which is the inflammation on the bottom of the feet, okay? So again, I want you to realize and recognize that a lot of times we have inflammation and we're not even looking at it that way. You can have diabetes and you're not thinking like, I got inflammation. But definitely the sugar is causing a lot of inflammation, and the inflammation is what's leading to the disease formation. Let me explain how that happens. Before inflammation, there's an irritation. The irritation is the sugar. The irritation is the salt. The irritation is the processed foods, okay? Whatever the irritation is, okay? The irritation could be an injury. It could be a blunt force trauma, okay? But no matter what it is, there's an initial irritation. The irritation is where you need to go back to change your habit, okay? Whatever the irritation is, that's what caused the inflammation, all right? So the inflammation now, as a result of the irritation, when it becomes chronic, okay? So let's say, for instance, if 99% of the time you're eating healthy, and once a year you decide to have some birthday cake that's vegan, and maybe even it's alkaline and it has a lot of sugar in it, but you have some birthday cake. All right, so if you have that, you're gonna have maybe an irritation because you eat healthy, okay? and you may feel a little woozy or whatever it may be, but if you eat that and then don't eat it again for another year, it's not going to become chronic. It's only one time, okay? So that's not going to form disease. But what happens is most people don't do that one time. Most people do it in moderation. Moderation for most people is consistency. It's chronic, okay? And when you do something chronically, you're inflamed chronically, chronic inflammation will lead to tissue dysfunction, all right? When the tissues are constantly being inflamed, it's going to lead to that tissue becoming dysfunctional. Because here's the thing, when the inflammation is there, it's cutting off the blood supply to that tissue. It's also causing swelling to that tissue, okay? Again, it could be in the thyroid, and we call it thyroiditis, all right? Where the thyroid itself becomes inflamed. When it becomes inflamed, now it's losing some of its function, all right? The longer and longer that persists chronically, this is when you start to see tissue dysfunction now becomes tissue degeneration. As a matter of fact, if you have thyroiditis, which is an inflammation of the thyroid, you have that long enough, that thyroid gland could turn into mush. I mean, literal mush, no longer tissue, just mush. All right, so this is what I mean by there's an initial irritation that caused the inflammation in the thyroid that led to tissue dysfunction. Now it's not doing what it typically would do. That dysfunction then leads to degeneration. Now the tissue begins to degenerate. Okay, now this is the important thing. This is the disease formation process. This is when you get the diagnosis. So initially you get the diagnosis for, thyroiditis, but then it becomes, now we got to remove your thyroid because it's mush. It's no longer functional at all. And whenever tissue becomes mush, dead tissue can cause issues in the body. It can become septic and toxic to the body. Okay? This is the point of no return once the tissue becomes completely degenerated. Okay? Because once you go from the tissue starts to degenerate and break down, maybe we can remove some of it, like the liver, for instance. You can remove up to 2/3 of the liver, and guess what? The body is so powerful that it can regenerate it. Okay? But if you don't get it early enough, now you go into tissue and organ failure. Okay? Now that's the point of no return. And quite often, I'm always seeing people show up when it's the point of no return and they're asking me, what can I do holistically? Well, the process has been violated for too long. There's no tissue function there anymore. The tissue has degenerated. It's in organ failure. Tissues become organs, okay? Tissue make up organs. So once you get to that point where the tissue is at a certain level of degeneration, there's no going back from that. Now I've seen people have chronic kidney disease and be at stage 3 and be able to reverse it. But once you get to like stage 4, chronic kidney disease, now we're talking about the degeneration and organ failure stage. Okay, so it's hugely important to understand. This is why you have to get involved in the process early. When you see that initial check engine light, which is inflammation, okay? With the kidneys, it will be that pain in the back, okay? You also notice that you have this sharp, dull pain in the back. Okay, that was the irritation that you needed to know. That was the irritation and the inflammation. When you see that stage, that's when you say, I need to change my habits, all right? The inflammation is a check engine light that says, I need to stop what I'm doing. You know how the song back in the day goes, stop what you're doing because you're about to ruin, okay? Because that's exactly what's about to happen, okay? So now that we kind of have an understanding of why it's so important to look at inflammation as a check engine light and why we need to actually do something when we see the inflammation, not when we actually get the diagnosis. Let's talk about some of these top natural anti-inflammatory medicinal foods because most people are inflamed, okay? Most conditions are inflammation, okay? Most conditions are conditions of inflammation. It always starts with an irritation and it goes to inflammation, tissue dysfunction, tissue degeneration, and eventually tissue organ failure. Okay? Doesn't matter what it is. All right? So this is why it's so important to incorporate these type of anti-inflammatory natural whole foods as a medicinal, modality. Okay? Number one, ginger root. Ginger root, you should be incorporating ginger root every day in all parts of your diet, in teas, in your food, etc. Okay, in some cultures, ginger is in everything, like Indian culture. Even when I go to Jamaica, a lot of the food has a lot of ginger in it. Okay, these people understand the importance of using food as medicine. It's not something that they incorporate when something goes wrong. They're incorporating this into their lifestyle, into their diet, into their food, into their cuisines. Okay? So ginger root. And why ginger root? Ginger root has these compounds in it called gingerols. Okay? These gingerols are anti-inflammatory. Okay? This also goes for turmeric as well too. All right? So number one, ginger root. I put that in everything. All right? Number two, avocados. Avocados, because they have healthy fats in them. Okay. Now, a lot of people will say, well, can I use avocado oil? Sure, but why use just the oil when you can have the whole food and get all of the benefits, including avocados are also really high in potassium as well, too. And that's good for blood pressure. Okay. So avocados are a great source of anti-inflammatory compounds. Okay. Number three, radicchio. Okay. Radicchio is a leafy veg. When you see it, it's all sort of a purple reddish, but this particular leafy vegetable is loaded with antioxidants, specifically lutein and zeaxanthin. Okay. All right, and these are very anti-inflammatory. So when you're making your salad, instead of always using that spinach that you always use, that actually has a lot of oxalic acid in it, okay? Especially when it's uncooked, instead of using that one, use some radicchio, okay? Look it up, check it out for yourself. And number four, and most importantly, omega-3s, okay? According to a survey conducted by the National Examination Survey for Americans, okay? Greater than 90% of Americans are deficient in omega-3s, okay? Omega-3s are what are anti-inflammatory to the body. Those are the things that put out the fires in our bodies, okay? And 90% of Americans are actually deficient in omega-3s. As a matter of fact, they're deficient in omega-3s and actually toxic levels of omega-6s. Omega-6s are pro-inflammatory. They cause inflammation in our bodies. And where do we find a lot of omega-6s? In processed foods, okay? In whole foods, we're gonna find the omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory. In the processed foods, we're gonna find a lot of the omega-6s, which are pro-inflammatory, causes a lot of inflammation in the body. And 70% of the standard American diet, if you eat just regular, meaning you have no standards for your food, you eat out of a drive-through window, you get out of box, bag, cans, and jars, no matter if you do cook it at home. If you eat a lot of processed foods, you're going to be eating a lot of pro-inflammatory omega-6s that cause inflammation to the body. That is the inflammation diet, okay? The standard American diet. Okay, so you got to get your omega-3s up. I'm going to give you 3 ways you can get your omega-3s up. You get these omega-3s up, here's the benefit to having your omega-3 levels raised. You're not only reducing the inflammation and the potential condition like carditis or thyroiditis or gingivitis, which is swelling of the gums, diabetes mellitus, which is diabetes. Okay, you're not only reducing the inflammation in those conditions, but here's the other benefit. A lot of people don't know when you're having conditions like dementia, Alzheimer's, fibromyalgia, which is very difficult to treat. You're also reducing the risk for those as well too. Because when you have a condition like dementia, it is inflammation in the brain. primarily caused by sugar, but it is inflammation in the brain. Okay, so when you get your omega-3 levels up, if you got a mother, a father, a grandparent who's suffering with memory loss, issues of, dementia, Alzheimer's, etc., you want to get their omega-3 levels up. All right, so I'm going to give you 3 ways you can do that. The first is algae. Okay, now I know what your doctor is going to tell you. Your doctor is going to tell you they need to be on fish oils. Fish oils are rancid. That's why they smell the way they do. Okay, that's why even when you take the capsule and then later on you burp, you have that fish smell that comes up. They're rancid. Okay, rancid means that pretty much a lot of the medicinal components are dead in it. All right, but algae, okay, algae is actually where fish get their omega-3s from. Okay, so the fish oil that your doctor is telling you to take, that's actually where those fish get their omega-3s from. So why not cut out the middleman and go directly to the source? Okay, so you could take some of these algae. Okay, you could do sea moss, which you can find on my website. Okay, so but these algae are great, even algae oil. Okay, if you do these algae oils, they're great sources of not only EPA but also DHA, and this improves memory. Okay, in my studies. It's been confirmed. All right, so get your algae oils up. That's going to help you. Or just eat algae, okay, in your salads and incorporate it into your diet. This is what I love about other cultures. They're not supplement cultures. They just incorporate it in their food. So I want to push you to incorporate it in your food. All right, so algae oils, number 1, or algae. All right, number 2, hemp seed. Okay, hemp seed is a great source of a fatty acid called ALA. Okay, 3 tablespoons of hemp seed gives you about 2,600 milligrams of ALA. Okay, a type of omega-3 fatty acid. All right. Also, what hemp seeds has been shown to help with as well is reducing blood clots. Okay, so it reduces inflammation in the body, and it also reduces blood clots as well too. All right, which reduces your risk for heart attacks and strokes, DVTs, deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolisms, So again, incorporating the hemp seeds, you can put them on your salads, put them in your smoothies, etc. All right, and the last one, walnuts. Okay, walnuts, 1 ounce of walnuts, and you get about 2,500 milligrams of ALA, which is, again, an omega-3 fatty acid. Is loaded with ALA. And so again, these are your 3 sources. Algae, okay, which is where fish get their omega-3s from, okay? Sea moss, all right? High in EPA and DHA, okay, which is great for our memory, okay? Hemp seeds, okay? Hemp seeds you can get at any natural store. I had somebody ask me the other day, is that weed? No, hemp seeds, okay? Stay focused, all right? And then walnuts, okay? Eating 1 ounce of walnuts, you can get about 2,500 milligrams of ALA, okay? So I hope this has been helpful. Until the next time, peace and blessings, and Godspeed.